Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Abedini, our prayers to you and to your children, and may our Lord continue to give you, your husband, and your children the strength you need to carry on with this important case. That is not a case. It's your husband. It's their children's father. But hearings like these, like this one, they are important because that's the way that we can push the administration, whatever the administration is in power, to do all that it can, to do more to ensure that your husband's release is immediate. And you may feel that certain individuals in power have abandoned your husband, and we can have disagreements about that, but the members here are united in a bipartisan manner to make sure that we will not remain silent, and we will continue to push. We're going to continue to raise your husband's case so that we can pressure all who can have a say in this to make Pastor Saeed's release a higher priority. Dr. Lantos Sweat, U.S. CERF has made recommendations to the U.S. government regarding religious freedom in Iran, several of which you outlined at a hearing on the same issue in March. What is your assessment of the administration's response to these recommendations? Do you believe that the U.S. has focused so much on attention on the nuclear negotiations that it has ignored the abysmal human rights record of Iran out of fear of angering the regime? Also, in October 2010, the Ayatollah Khamenei publicly called non-Muslims, religious minorities, enemies of Islam, and accused them of weakening the faith of Iran's Muslim youth. And another leading Ayatollah referred to non-Muslims as sinful animals. Statements like these they incite violence against religious minorities. Would you agree with that? Have you observed increased violence against these groups following these kinds of provocative statements by so-called leaders? And despite the recommendations of U.S. CERF and the European Union's decision to individually sanction the judge who gave Pastor Saeed this outrageous 8-year sentence, the U.S. has yet to sanction this judge. And it's not a partisan attack, it's a reality. What message does this lack of action send to religious minorities and human rights advocates in Iran? The Iranian regime's human rights record doesn't improve when the U.S. remains silent. It's an issue that doesn't get much attention because of the nuclear topic, but whatever the administration is in power, do you believe that the administration has been silent about Pastor Saeed's case? Do you believe it's spoken enough about this case and the case of others? And I've asked a lot of questions, and you can just pick whichever one you would like to answer. Otherwise, we'd be here forever. So we will start with Dr. Lantos Sweat.
Well, I think it would be an overstatement to say that they have ignored the human rights situation in Iran. And one of the things that I referenced in my testimony was a relatively recent statement by the National Security Advisor, Dr. Susan Rice. That's a very high-level person within the administration. And she said, and I quote, "Our sanctions on Iran's human rights abusers will continue, and so will our support for the fundamental rights of all Iranians." So ignore, I think, would be too strong of a term. But I would also be remiss if I were not to say that we certainly at USERF feel that more needs to be done and more can be done.
Thank you. I'm going to cut you off just so that we can hear from the others.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Abedini or Mr. Sickle, whoever would like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say, and because I do want to clear up again, and Congressman Deutsch is no longer with us, but you know, my opening statement was all about this bipartisan support we've had in Congress, which has been unprecedented, and it's not a attack Republican and Democrat issue. It's an administration issue that I think Congress has also got to deal with. You know, are you being told what is accurate? And I hope that briefing, that classified briefing, clears what has been so difficult for the administration to communicate to us, which is what is actually being done and what's not, and when is it being done, or, and I would add to that, we've been told a number of times, well, Iran has been told, or this Iranian official, that Iranian official, from the president on down. What answer have we gotten? We've never been told an answer by Iran. And so, you know, this idea that we may be asking sometimes on the margins, in a phone call, that's wonderful. What is the response?
He must not become an asterisk or a footnote.
Exactly right, exactly.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Abedini.
I wanted to make sure Mr. Deutsch was here to discuss that, but I don't have an agenda. And there's nothing more than I would like to see my country united on an important issue such as human rights. I've been fighting tirelessly for my husband's release for over a year. It's been a lonely road for me and the kids as well. I haven't seen my kids most of this 444 days as well, and they haven't had a mom in the last year. But for me, as an American citizen, it was unbelievable. I felt abandoned when we had the chance to not necessarily to discuss it at the nuclear, but as a precondition, as a good faith effort, which we've done for the Iranian government with the easing of the sanctions and the monetary and prisoners and so on. I would have expected my government, as we've done good faith efforts for Iran, to have, you know, I like that example of a drug dealer, and, you know, he's abusing his wife and kids. But what about he's abusing your child? You don't demand him to release your child before negotiating about the drug dealing? And I expected my government, before shaking hands with the world's #1 violator of human rights issues and supporter of terrorism, that's put aside. They have an American citizen.
Don't get me started about shaking hands.
Before shaking hands, before negotiating, we've done good faith effort. I expected our government to have Iran show good faith effort, that they want to work with us. This would have been a perfect opportunity for Iran to release the 3 Americans. And I don't have an agenda. I'm not a political person. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and as an American citizen, and millions of American citizens who are behind me in this, we do not understand what happened. We do not understand, and I'm very much upset by it, and I very much feel abandoned, and I feel my husband has been abandoned. And I do hope he survives that prison, and we can bring him home quickly.
Thank you, and the last word to the good doctor.
Every authoritarian government will push back when we bring up human rights. They'll fuss, they'll make excuses, they'll say it complicates everything else we want to do. That's their instinctive reaction. We should know better. The one thing that is clear, if we don't bring something up, they get the message. They get the message that we don't care. And I would also, again, point back to specific cases like Mazyar Bahari in 2009. By his own account, he felt sort of lost in prison, and once then Secretary of Clinton raised his case publicly, his treatment in prison immediately improved, and that led to his release. So it is critical that we raise these cases.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry I'm going to have to depart. Thank you.